The year was 1907. Teddy Roosevelt was president. We are still several years away from World War I. And Holland was a small but bustling resort town, with the Makatawa Hotel on the south side of the channel, and across the water the magnificent Ottawa Hotel. In January, Classes Holland authorized the forming of a new CRC congregation, and members of Central Avenue CRC, 9th Street CRC, and East Saugatuck CRC became charter members of the new congregation. On May 1, they decided to buy 3 lots on the corner of 16th Street and Maple Avenue in Holland to leave room for a church and a proposed parsonage. The church would become known as 16th Street CRC because it was in fact the 16th CRC church on that particular street. To finance construction of the new church building, congregational members donated $705. They received donations from the neighborhood of $1,015. Central Avenue CRC donated $1,200, and Grascombe CRC to the south donated a new communion set. The lowest construction bid at the time was for $6,490, so a mortgage was obtained for $4,000 at 6% interest. The cornerstone for 16th Street CRC was laid on August 25, 1907. Incidentally, that same week, author Frank Baum finished working on his sequel to The Wizard of Oz, while staying at a cottage in Makatawa Park, 3 miles west of the church. Construction was complete after 9 short months, and on May 21, 1908, they held a dedication service for the shiny new 16th Street CRC, which was painted a convenient sepia tone to make it easier to photograph. In 1910, a parsonage was built at 173 West 16th Street for a cost of $4,000. Also, a room in the basement of the church was finished off to provide more meeting space for the growing congregation. 1914 saw 2 important additions to the church. The first was the obligatory pipe organ, installed for $1,000. And secondly, an outbuilding was constructed to help meet the transportation needs of the pastor. No, not that. This, of course, started the long tradition of pastors riding without a helmet. Things were quiet on the building front over the next 30 years. The church was painted in 1942. In 1943, the organ was reconstructed. Knock it off! The organ was reconstructed and electrified at a cost of $3,840 in 1943, and in 1945 the organ was again repaired for another $580. That same summer, the morning services switched from Dutch to English. By 1948, the congregation was outgrowing their current building, with families taking turns listening to the church service in the basement. So in August of 1949, a cornerstone was laid for a $35,000 remodeling of the current building, and later that same year in December they held a dedication service. 1954 saw several improvements to the auditorium, including new rubber tile floors, carpeting, pews, lighting, a new roof, and also a PA system was installed. Which got me wondering, with no PA system, how did the people listening in the basement several years earlier hear the church service? I guess those were considered the good seats. The 1960s proved to be a decade of change for 16th Street CRC. In 1963, a letter was sent to the congregation asking if they preferred to build on their present location or to move the church. In 1964, they signed a $40,000 land contract to purchase property on the outskirts of Holland, which is the present location, on the corner of 35th. Acknowledging the fact they could no longer be called 16th Street CRC, meetings were held to pick a new name. The choices brought forth by the church council included Bethesda, Covenant, Fairhaven, Fellowship, and Olivet CRCs. Thankfully, the congregation was also consulted, and they added Pioneer, Unity, and Providence CRC. It took 5 votes to reach the 2/3 majority to change the name. In 1966, the congregation approved a $255,000 building project with plans to finance it with the issuance of $240,000 in public notes. Later that same year, the City of Holland informed the church that Ottawa Avenue, which was little more than a 2-track at the time, would be improved and extended between 32nd and 40th Street in preparation of Holland Christian's new high school. The only problem is this project would orphan a 40-foot strip of Providence property on the west side of Ottawa Avenue. This land eventually became known as the Devil's Strip for reasons I can't locate, and was held by the church until the early 1980s when it was sold to Holland Christian for their middle school. They broke ground on April 15, 1967, with construction completed and a dedication service being held on May 1, 1968. In 1974, plans were approved for a new parsonage on 35th Street immediately adjacent to the church. This was financed by a cash drive, and construction was completed in 1975. In 1986, a committee was established to consider expanding the current building to meet the needs of the growing congregation. However, in 1987, a proposal was approved to purchase land on the south side of 40th Street near Ottawa Avenue for a brand new facility, citing insufficient room for expansion on the current property. The 1990s proved to be another decade of transition for Providence CRC. In 1990, the congregation voted to sell that 40th Street property to Central Wesleyan Church for their new building project, and a search was begun to find a new location for Providence to expand. Also in 1992, they decided to sell the 35th Street parsonage and the two adjoining parcels. Growing philosophical differences in the church came to a head on March 22, 1993, when 60% of the congregation, 8 full-time staff members, and all but one council member left Providence to form Ridgepoint Community Church. That following Sunday, March 28, 1993, the first of the transition services was overseen by a young and talented minister from Calvary CRC, our very own Keith Dornboss. Pastor Keith remained on through the transition and was called as a full-time pastor shortly after. In the mid-1990s, the Holland Deacons Conference approached Providence with the idea of adding a Lakeshore Little People's Place to the site. In 1997, it was approved, and a 6,000 square foot addition was added at a cost of $535,000, which was shared between Providence and Lakeshore Little People's Place. In the early 2000s, the congregation of Providence was growing. Even the switch to 2 Sunday morning services did not alleviate the congestion. So in early 2004, a Faith Under Construction campaign was launched, and a 22,000 square foot expansion and remodel project was approved at a cost of $2.6 million. In June of 2004, a groundbreaking ceremony was held in a patch of ground where Cale Pilon had set his lawnmower deck too low, making the digging easier. The new facility would contain a new sanctuary, fellowship hall, nursery, library, kitchen, classrooms, and a youth loft. Construction continued for the better part of a year, and on April 17, 2005, the new building was dedicated, effectively doubling our space available for ministry. This space has not been wasted, with worship services, Bible studies, meetings, parties, and practices totaling over 800 events each year. I hope you've enjoyed this look back at the history of Providence facilities over the past 100+ years. Make sure to tune in next week as we track staff hairstyles over the past decade.